Hey, Gutfox here. Today we got MUTMen episode number 85, and I'm joined as always by the Texas boy. How are you, good sir?
Doing good today. It's nice out right now, so can't complain.
Oh yeah, that's very nice. And we got a very special guest, probably the guest on the greatest MUTMen ever, but I lost the audio and screwed it up. Rex Dickson, creative director of Madden. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Great. Yeah. So basically, we got a bunch of questions here to go down. Me and Tex are gonna take turns going through them one after the other. And how's that sound? Pretty good. Hope so. Off the bat, I hope this was an easy one. Will Xbox One X players be able to play against Xbox One players?
Yes.
Awesome.
That's pretty cool because I wonder how this is gonna work though. I know on PS4 that if you're on PS4 Pro, there's like lag on the guys that are on the PS4. So hopefully that's not the case on the Xbox when they do that.
I don't think that has anything to do with the platform. I just think that has to do with that PS4 lag issue.
Mhm.
And once we get that fixed, that'll go away.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So,
All right. So, go ahead.
oh yeah, go on, Texas.
No, I was gonna go to the next question, but you got it.
No. After you.
No, I was gonna go to the next question on the list.
On your list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Shoot.
Oh, gotcha. I thought you had something else to add on.
we're kind of off.
Awkward of interviews. Yeah. All right, gotcha. So my question is about MUT squads and head-to-head. So both of those modes are played on competitive. My question was were those modes kind of different in like the rules? So if you were on aggressive in MUT squads, you got penalized a lot. But before this recent patch, in head-to-head, you could put it on aggressive and not suffer any penalties. So my question was like, why were the modes, even though they're both competitive, very different when it came to the sliders?
The slider shouldn't be different at all. That's probably a case where we have penalties off in MUT, and then my guess is that in squads, for various reasons, I'm sure I could think of a few, they had penalties on, and so that's where you're getting the variation. So that wasn't actually tied to the competitive play style. That was actually variations between the mode, I believe.
Gotcha. Okay.
Interesting.
Go on.
Go ahead. Okay. On that, like, was there variations in game modes in like draft champions? What about like last year? I know a lot of people said draft champions played differently. Is there any variations still there between modes?
The only difference there would be the players, and so based on ratings, if you're running an 85 OVR team in MUT, chances are most of your players are between 85 and 90. But in draft champions, that's going to vary greatly. And so if you have a bad draft and let's say you don't get a good corner and he's got a good wide receiver, that's where you're going to see the variation start to pop up. Also in the offensive and defensive line, just based on the players you were able to draft, would create some variations in how the game played under the hood.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
That's all rating their job.
Yeah. So in a MUT draft, what do you specifically draft for?
Well, I don't play a lot of MUT draft. I'm a guy who, like, once I start investing in my team, like, that becomes my thing, and I don't want to spend any of my time in the game not working on progressing kind of my team and playing with my team. But that said, I'd probably, based on the way I'm playing this year, I would probably invest in pass blocking and short throw accuracy because I'm running a lot of over the middle and quick outs and kind of quick West Coast stuff.
I got you. So what's your favorite playbook?
I've been using Miami lately.
Really? Dolphins, I know Dolphins have that one. It was like in the shotguns. I think it's like a doubles where it's kind of like a in route, like a deep in route that just absolutely roasts a lot of coverage. Have you been using? I forgot what the name of that play is, but you've been using that play at all?
Yeah,
that shot?
I run a lot of snaps. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good stuff. Hey, I got a question. Based off Twitter, when do you think we're getting the fourth quarter of the MUT Halloween promo?
The fourth quarter of the Halloween promo?
Yeah, that was a joke. Remember you said that the thing had 4 quarters to it, but we only got 3 of them. I heard you said Guru gave you crap for that one.
Guru gives me crap for a lot of stuff. Guru even makes me block people I don't want to block. He's mean to me.
That's great. Just the whole community block on that. That's pretty dope.
That's great.
Yeah, if you're in the community, you're listening to this, and you've been blocked by me, there's a 10% chance Guru made me do it.
That's funny. So with that, like, okay, I got a question, kind of follow up. Are you in charge of the MUT staff too?
No, sir.
Okay.
My role has very recently changed.
Okay.
So previously, up until this year, the last 5-6 years, I have been the creative director on gameplay. And while I had oversight over other areas, gameplay was my primary point of emphasis. But just recently, there's been some kind of changes within the leadership of the Madden team. Clint Oldenburg is now the design lead of gameplay team, and I now have more franchise level influence. So I'm getting more involved in franchise mode. I'm getting more involved in MUT. I'm starting to like split my focus around instead of just being on gameplay. And so in that respect, I work closer with the people in charge of MUT than I ever have before. And that's only been like the last like 5-6 months or so.
Okay.
That I've really started working closely with them.
So does Clint report to you then? Or is he?
Yes, sir.
Okay, he does. So the MUT people is Jake Stein and Patrick. What's his last name?
Patrick Balanca is a designer on the team, but the people you're looking for are not on Twitter. I think the other one who is on Twitter is Billy Schatz.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that kind of them and a couple other people and one of the head producers of MUT and represents sort of the brain trust of that group.
Oh, I gotcha. All right. So yeah, it is pretty nice, and we'll circle back to this in our community segment about the people on Twitter, and we'll talk about that more going forward. But I think Tex, you got the next question.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I've been seeing on Twitter recently, especially after this last tuning update or last update. With the coaching adjustments. So my question was, do you think you over-nerf coaching adjustments? Because now a lot of them, maybe even the conservative ball carrier, kind of seem to be useless.
Oh, I still use conservative ball carrier. The AI loves to strip you when you got the lead late. I swear to God, like there's time. Like you've been stripped by the AI like once, and you'll never forget to do conservative ball carrier again. I'll say this about coach adjustments. Very popular feature in NCAA, and anything that adds to a meta and makes the meta of a game deeper is immediately attractive to us. And so having like proven successful in other titles, it seemed like a no-brainer. Obviously, when people play competitively for money, it's a kind of a different beast. And that feature did not land the way we wanted it to. And I still think there's a couple little tweaks we need to make. But I want people to be a little patient with it because something that's that big that kind of evolves the meta and the strategy of the game is something we should all kind of be invested in. And so it's really important that we continue to tune it and get it right. And I think if the next question is, are you considering taking it back out? My answer is no. I think it absolutely has a place. It's just a question of us getting the tuning right.
So then my next question is, the competitive community wants you to take coaching adjustments out of the game?
Some of them.
Okay. Wow. That's kind of the first time I've heard that, because I really enjoy coaching adjustments, and like near the end of the game, if you're down, you can set them all like you're tackling too aggressive. Whereas like generally I have tackling. Pre-patch I had tackling on conservative because there was no fumbles, so I didn't have any stripping and stuff. So it's kind of like you said, the meta evolved, and now I have my guys on balance for tackling, ball carrier balanced. Because I fumbled on conservative, but I think I fumbled the same amount on conservative after the patch as I have balance. So I personally like them a lot. And like you say about the meta, is there anything like a blog or anything? Like we talked in the Lost podcast. We talked about maybe a blog for traits and stats and thresholds. Yeah. Is there something like that coming to kind of tell us what these coaching adjustments do? There is a coaching adjustments blog, and what trait they overwrite, Rex?
Yeah, I think there's a deeper question there, like because I'm sure it's going to come up in this interview about the thresholds and more explanation, and why we haven't fully committed and said this is the number. They also gets into like publication of ratings. What do they do? Like, how do you why is 91 zone so important? What other ratings are in fact there? Like when there's a hit stick on a ball carrier, what is the formula that derives whether or not he fumbles or not? I know there's a lot of questions out there, and especially for the people who play MUT, it's basically like, hey, we're kind of in a way paying for these ratings. We should deserve a chance to know exactly what they're doing. And we are desperate to get that information out and published, but it's a complicated process because some of these formulas involve like multiple ratings thrown in together in a mix, and it's a fairly complex formula. And the way you kind of publish that externally and have it make sense has been a challenge for us. We wanted to do it for 3 years now. We had this feature every year. We call it the Ratings Bible. And every year we chip away and we get a little bit closer. But, it's still a process. And I think what we'll end up doing is probably picking like 3 or 4 different outcome scenarios and kind of go a little bit deeper into what those ratings do.
Yeah.
But with all that said, I kind of, from our side, we kind of like the community puzzling their way through this. That maybe we shouldn't give you every single definitive black and white answer. That maybe some of the mystery of, people kind of doing test cases and putting YouTube videos together is part of what makes it cool and special. And I'd hate to just come out and say it's this and take all that away. So we want to get there, but I'm kind of okay with the way it is right now.
Huh. Texas, do you have any thoughts on that?
So it's kind of interesting because I didn't think EA liked when we did those breakdowns of what stuff did or didn't do, because it seems like it kind of contradicts a lot of stuff. So like I remember last year the big one was strength, and the strength rating mattered, but then like you see testing videos and strength didn't matter at all. So it's kind of interesting that y'all actually like watching those videos and having us kind of do our own thing when it comes to them. So
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I think if you look at the way games are evolving these days, like a lot of games, if you look at like, I don't know, anything that come out recently, Destiny 2, COD, like there's no learning curve. You get thrown in and kicked in the deep end, and it's like, go figure it out. And what I'm watching with my kids with Super Mario and Zelda is they'll immediately go on YouTube and try to find the information that they're looking for versus like relying on the game to teach them. And I actually think that that's good for a game. There's something special about a community like coming together and trying to extract information out of a game that is useful to other gamers. And I'm kind of jazzed by that happening within Madden.
So you guys gonna pull a skill trainer out next year?
No, I don't think we'd ever pull it out. We'd have to evolve it, but it's considered the best in class trainer mode in sports games right now. We haven't been able to give it an upgrade because we've had a lot of other things going on, but definitely want to get back to it.
Yeah, the skills trainer is very nice. But as to the stats and stuff, what about I blame Texas and Clickwood for making MUT not go over 99 speed last year, and I don't know what we're gonna get this year, but did that play into any factor for why the MUT team decided not to go over 100 stats last year? Is because of these testing videos?
There's a long, drawn-out answer to that question,
okay.
And I'm not going to get into it because it's going to be it's too. There's no easy way for me to explain it in less than a minute, and so I'm just going to say that there was a very good reason why we had to move away from that, and just you'll have to take my word on it.
That sounds very interesting. I mean,
hurts my ego. I thought I had I had the holy grail right there. I ruined the game for some people.
Yeah.
So it's not what it is. I
mean, we do have time if there's a explanation, or is it something that's kind of secret that you guys don't really want to get into?
It's a little bit of both. I wouldn't call it secret. It's just kind of like it gets into a gray area that I'm not I don't feel comfortable talking about because I potentially put myself in a compromised position if I got too deep into it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. We understand that.
Just trust me. The decision was made for the right reasons. And even with something like me, I'm like, that stuff can get out of hand. Like, where does it stop? At the end of the year when they're dropping 130 speed and stuff. And it's like, the game's not built to survive that. Like, nobody in gameplay knows what that's going to do to the game. It's probably going to break things all over, and that's why I push back hard on it.
Yeah, well, I got actually a question about that a little bit later here. And on that topic, like, okay, going back to the community finding things out, do you think that's good? I know Madden's kind of gone to the competitive side, and you've really kind of directed the ship to make it a more competitive game. Is it fair to the competitors to kind of leave them out in the open without all the information on what does what and make them figure it out?
Well, part of being a competitor is understanding the meta of the game. And one of the reasons why people like Dubby and Skimbo and Problem keep making it to the finals is because they have a deeper understanding of these systems and how they work. And so I don't want to flatline that. There should be some value in becoming a master of the chess match and all its various components. The one thing Madden has over a lot of other games and other esports is the strategy layer, the chess match. And like, I think the more you start saying it works like this, the more that chess match devolves and gets flat. And so there is some desire to go after that and explain more information, convey more of the meta, display formulas, kind of like get into displaying the dice rolls and what you rolled. But it's such a slippery slope, and I don't think it makes the game any better.
Okay. Yeah, because what you're saying, a lot of people have said this. I think Zan even say this on Twitter, that a knowledge gap equals a skill gap. So that's pretty consistent with what I've heard from competitors. But, all right, Texas, do you want to go? Any next question?
Well, we already talked about the thresholds and how, like, you don't mind having it be a mystery and people figure it out for themselves. Well, my other question would be with the certain rating. So we know zone has a threshold. Speed obviously doesn't. Speed goes up incrementally. Is the plan in the future to try to basically remove thresholds and just have players react better based off how high their ratings are, or just keep thresholds in the game for in the future?
So, basically the thresholds came from our competitive players. Mm-hmm. The way this went down, I'll get through this as fast as I can, is a bunch of the competitive players, about 20 of them, came out to the studio at some point last year. And we sat down and I told them we were going to build a competitive play style. And I asked them, like, if we're building a competitive play style specifically for competitive esport play, what do you guys want to see? What are the top 5 things that need to be addressed in the competitive play style? And the main thing they all gravitated through was random rolls, specifically pass accuracy, receivers dropping balls, defenders dropping balls, and there was one other, which I can't remember right now. But anyway, we started talking about how to deliver guarantees. And they said, well, if my feet's set, clean pocket, I make an open read, that should be complete 100% of the time. And my answer is obviously, well, what if you're Tom Savage? Should you be as accurate as Tom Brady at that point? Mm-hmm. This gets into the territory where we started coming up with the idea of the threshold, which is, as long as I have a card or a player who has above a specific ratings threshold, then I should get the guarantee. And so we actually thought that idea was workable. And the other way we were thinking about going was with traits and like abilities, but the game actually is better suited to deliver the former than the latter right now. And so that's what we established. And basically those numbers indicate that once you cross this threshold and you meet all the conditions involved, the outcome is more or less guaranteed.
Okay.
Which is exactly what the players wanted us to do.
So for throw accuracy, are the thresholds the same on all 3 stats? And what is it?
No, like for example, if the threshold cap is 90 or 91, I think that's what they're saying these days. It has to be that rating and that rating threshold. So for example, my short throw accuracy, if it was 75, but my medium and deep were both 95, I could still overthrow drags and I could still overthrow slants, but I would very rarely, if ever, overthrow something medium or deep.
Okay, all right, that's good
Okay.
to hear. That's good to hear with the thresholds for accuracy at 91 also. So is what you're saying across the board on all these threshold stuffs like route running, zone coverage, that's all 91?
There's no threshold for route running. The only thresholds that exist right now are catching for defenders, catching for receivers, and passing accuracy for quarterbacks. I keep thinking there's a fourth one, but I can't freaking think of it.
Is it carrying or no?
No.
Is it ball carrier moves?
No, it would have been in the blog. Anyway, those are the main ones, though.
Okay, because I know there are different animations at different levels too. Like once
That's a whole separate system.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with threshold caps.
Okay. Yeah. So and the animations are pretty well known though. I guess when I said the route running, we were talking about the animation differences between the two.
Let me actually touch one thing before we move on, because like when you guys talk about the big topic right now is the zone, right?
Yeah.
And the two ratings in factor there are zone coverage and play rec, because those two things are governing a very specific behavior. Now, when people think zones, they're thinking like, oh, it must mean how the guy drops, how he reacts to a receiver coming into his area. And all those outcomes are governed by the zone rating. However, that's not what people are talking about. They're talking about one specific outcome, which is called break on ball, which means when I see the quarterback start his throwing motion, in other words, he begins his passing animation, at some point a window opens up, and that window is what we call our elite window. And at that point, that guy can actually start breaking towards the quarterback's where his shoulder is going. And so once the ball comes out, there's sort of another window, and then every sort of tick after that, and a tick is like 60 ticks in a second, it can check again. And so the ratings threshold is sort of built across those windows. And so a guy who doesn't have the 91 zone or the threshold cap zone will maybe wait a millisecond or 2 milliseconds longer than the guy who does have the cap to break on the ball. And that's what I meant where I said it gets pretty deep, because we're not actually talking about overall zone coverage. We're talking specifically about the break on ball behavior. Now, the next step of that conversation, the next question I would ask if I were you guys is, well, how does play rec figure into that? And this is where it gets even more complicated, and that's why we have such trouble talking about this stuff.
Yeah, so I've seen the testing videos on play rec and zone coverage, and I've done them in previous years myself. In 17, it was to break on the ball. It was nothing but zone coverage, play action, and the run passes was play rec. And in 18 here, I've seen Chaos and Zan do stuff, and they say it's zone coverage specifically for break on the ball. But I think what you're trying to say is that it depends on when you say your windows and ticking on it, depends kind of like, does it depend on what position the defensive back is and what zone they're in for how quickly they're going to react?
No, it has only to do with, does he see the ball, and if so, at what junction in time in the quarterback's throwing motion can he break on it?
Okay. Now, keeping on zone coverage, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think you may have overtuned zones from the first patch to where we've gotten to right now? Is it too hard to throw the ball?
I'm sorry, I'm losing your audio.
Oh, sorry. Is it hard? Did you guys say overpower zones from that first patch to now? Is there a better middle ground, or are you guys comfortable with how zones are playing right now with 91 zone?
That change is literally like, it's not even a half of a quarter of a second that changed between those two things. So the variation of that window is very tight. Like that compromise was like maybe 10 ticks, which is like, a tenth of a second. And so there's not that much room to get more granular with it.
Oh, really? So there's no middle ground. So wow. Okay. All right. That's interesting. Have you heard from a lot of people that they have that zones are overpowered?
Well, here's where I'm at with it. People are going to find something to complain about no matter what state the game is in.
Fair enough.
But I will say this, at launch, the overwhelming majority of people that we heard from told us that zones were not playing well enough, and that it was a deal breaker. And here's the thing, when you're on defense, you're not in control of your whole team. And so when your team starts being unable to cover things, you feel completely hopeless, which is different from when you're on offense and you're in control of the ball and where it's going. And so it was a pretty obvious decision that softening up, or tightening up the zones would help people feel like, hey, at least my AI is doing their job. So if I do my job, I can run a defense. And the sentiment over the game has swung overwhelmingly back in the positive after we made that change. So I have to assume it was a good change. Now, a few people have came at me, and even Dubby now is saying it's too hard to complete a deep throw. I personally think the game does better when it's more offensive, but just based on community feedback, I'd have to say we're in a better place now than we were before when the zones were a little bit softer.
Yeah, I will say I would agree with you on that point, because pre that first patch, like you could throw that tight end angle route out of deuce close, complete that corner route almost 100% of the time, and it was easy yards, and no zone really covered it unless you usered it. So I agree that the game's playing much better now than it has before. Texas, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree as well. I'm liking the defense that I'm playing in Madden. I feel like I can actually play defense now as opposed to before where I would have a guy in position and want to make a play in the ball. So I actually think this is better. Just you got to make better reads now, which is good for the defense. So that way you lose to a person that actually is out here throwing the ball in open windows. But before we move on to the next question, I just want to ask one last thing. You did say that a while ago, I think it was last year during one of the tournaments, that you like how the game evolves from August to like May with the update. So with the zone being at 91 right now, is there any chance that we see that threshold increase in the future to like 94 or 95? So that way we're not kind of using the same players the entire year.
I personally don't think you can do that. I think it's dangerous to say or to move that threshold, because people have an expectation now that player will play a certain way, and if we do something on our end to make him play worse, I think that's a miss on us. So the whole idea of the cap was that at this point and over, you will get the most elite behavior, and so that's my expectation of how it will stay.
So talking about between now and next June, what's the point of upgrading our cards above that then? Like what's going to motivate us to get the new Chris Harris over the old one that already hits the threshold? Just speed and other stats like that?
The assumption is other stats, that speed, acceleration, the other things that play a factor. And there is something about Madden where certain cards, given ratings variations high or lower, the community knows certain cards just play like beasts. And like I have an 85 Dion card who I refuse to replace at corner because no matter how much better corners I get, he dominates games. My running back is an 85 Bo Jackson, and I don't need a better card right now because he's playing like a beast for me, even at 85. And so I'd like to think that people will gravitate towards cards that play the way they like to play. But, there's some truth to your statement. And I would, part of that concession about establishing that cap was also saying to the MUT guys, like, hey, are you guys okay with this? Because this is what we're saying. And, when we pitched it, they're like, well, yeah, that does sound pretty scary to us. And we said, but this is what your players want. And they said, okay, well, let's be players first about it and try it out. And I just checked in with them recently and said, like, once we establish these threshold caps, how has this affected the market and the auction prices? And we had quite a talk about it. And the end result of that conversation, the assessment was made that it has been good for MUT and good for competitive play. And so we're going to stick with it. Okay,
interesting. Texas, any thoughts on that?
I was kind of hoping you would say yes, that you would increase the threshold to like 95. Because as a player, I wouldn't mind it, but like, because I would have to upgrade my team. But other than speed and other ratings like that, I wanted to have that entry be just for that, because I can actually be like, okay, cool. So the people I'm investing in, so I power up right now Adrian Amos, and so I can, if a new one comes out who will be a little bit faster, I will feel more inclined to update, especially if they increase the threshold at like 95. And guys like Ed Reed in like a month, they say they increase threshold 95, but have a better purpose, because right now Ed Reed has 94 zone. I think he maxed out at 96 or 97, I think something like that. And so it's kind of like no point to pick Ed Reed up right now if he's going to play just as well as like my Amos. So I'm kind of disappointed in that answer, but I understand why you're doing it.
We're still open to it, but from my personal perspective, like, it could happen. I'm not saying it definitely won't, but from my personal perspective, raising the threshold cap feels like I don't like, it feels dirty to me. It kind of like the underlying subtext is, oh, go get a better card, and it's like, it doesn't feel players first to me.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think people would be pretty angry if their cards stopped performing as well as they were.
I don't need another reason for the community to be angry.
That is true.
Hey, on that, so what are your thoughts on? I was asked to ask you this question. What are your thoughts on as far as how Madden actually plays? Is it as good as it's ever played in its history? I had a competitive guy, a very old competitive guy, say this is the best Madden's played since the PS2 days. Now, what are your thoughts? Is this the best Madden ever?
Are you asking me personally or just
personally?
Not for me, no.
What's your favorite?
But I have, honestly, I haven't made my favorite Madden game yet. NCAA 14, that's a game I am like truly like historically it has a place in my mind, my heart, and my career as one of the best things I created. I don't feel that way about a Madden game yet. I feel like I'm getting closer every year, but I haven't sat down and played something in Madden and said, like, this is the Rex vision. This is what I've always wanted to get to. This is what I've been working towards. I'm still shy of that mark. So I'll say I haven't made my favorite Madden yet, but very soon I think we'll get there.
Yeah. So I kind of, this is kind of something that you're going to say, I can't answer that, but is there talk around the office about NCAA football coming back?
We talk about it all the time. There's a lot of people from the NCAA football team who are still on the team. We just have to wait for the legal stuff to sort itself out. And we're actually kind of like a few of us who are kind of long range thinking about creative and design. We always find ways to sneak in like, hey, is there any way we could do it this way? Or maybe if we did it that way, and we'll sneak in some idea and we'll take it to our EP's office. And some of them will get a little bit traction and then fade away, and others will die instantly. And it's always talked about, and I'm sure eventually once hopefully the NCAA figures this thing out, we'll be the first ones there.
That's awesome. So with that, with the NCAA, is there any ever talk, because that used to launch in July, and then we'd have like a month of that before Madden, and then we like build our player career. Is there any thought of pushing Madden up to July in order, because that's kind of like the rough month for us gamers and especially football fans with it's kind of a dead zone. Are you comfortable keeping Madden as an August launch?
I'd like to move it up too, but everything's kind of cascading now. And we had a really rough last year because of frostbite, like doing an engine. We've done 2 engine ports in the last 5 years. First to Ignite Madden 25 and then to frostbite last year. And those are brutal. Like, I don't know if you know anything about development, but anytime a team tells you like we had to write a new engine or port our engine, like it's pretty much going to wipe out 80% of your capacity.
Wow.
And so landing a year like that is hard because it's harder than normal years. Things go later. We didn't get to do a beta because of it. And so everything got compressed to the back end. And also Longshot was big and complicated, and we'd never done anything like it before. So all these factors like push things up against the wall. And so we'd need to kind of have a year where we're not taking on something major and huge like that would be the right year to try to target an earlier ship date. But I think there's desire there on our side as well. I can't see where in the next 2 or 3 years that might happen.
I got you. Texas, any thoughts on that?
I mean, that makes sense. Because we were talking about this a while ago on the podcast, how like switching to a new engine is not going to be the easiest thing. So I guess once you're under a full cycle of like a year, once you get comfortable with this one, you can probably do a lot more. We can probably see some more stuff in Madden 19, Madden 20 that we've been clamoring for. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's way more than just the team feeling comfortable with it. I said this at EA Play. I don't know how many people grasped onto it, but when Madden's on Frostbite, you know what that means? It means we can migrate features from NBA. We can migrate features from FIFA. We can migrate things from Mass Effect, from Dragon Age, from Anthem. It doesn't matter who in the studio system or EA is working on a feature. If somebody's built something that's cool, another team can kind of just take that thing and port it into their code, and it's all Frostbite. So, and we're learning that there is a avalanche of technical features that have not been in Madden that other teams have built that we're like grabbing and taking, and a lot of the legwork has been done for us. And I'm very excited about what that means for this franchise over the next 2 to 3 years.
That's sweet. So we're going to get building destruction, right, in Madden? We're going to have the stadiums falling down when it's super...
I'll have to find a way to work it in.
Like Batman. So with
That'd be a cool solo challenge right there. Running for the field collapses. That's a gauntlet challenge right there.
there it is.
I need credit for that. I need to check in the mail.
The Texas boy gauntlet. So yeah, I know you guys lost a lot of dev time to Longshot, NBA Live, and Frostbite Engine this year. So now are you back to full staff here for 19, or are you still like is Longshot still taking resources for next year?
I can't speak to that. There always seems to be something big on the horizon that we're kind of funding and helping support.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say yes. It's a more even distribution of staff now that we're not still porting the Frostbite engine. But I'm not quite ready to call it a normal year just yet, for reasons I don't want to get into. Is there 7 letters NBA Live? Is that a close? Are you guys supporting that again this year? Or you just can't talk about it? So no. I mean, when you say support, it's kind of interesting because we actually do a lot of stuff together, and we both work within one studio. And much like I'm sure people from the WWE team at 2K work across teams with NBA and vice versa within Visual Concepts, it's the same at Tiburon. And so resources move back and forth all the time, and they borrow from us and we borrow from them. They contributed a lot of resources to get the Frostbite port, and we contributed some resources over there to get their franchise mode off the ground. And it's this give and take, but what we're trying to get to is where the creative, hopefully in the future, is actually mostly shared, so that we're building the same things and benefiting both games, and we get double the manpower. That's the dream anyway.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. I mean, but it feels like Madden. Well, I'm not going to get into that. All right. Let's. I guess there's another question on that topic. How much of the team is already working on Madden 19 versus staying and working on Madden 18 patches?
Probably like 90%, more than 90% are on 19 right now.
More than 90% on 19. Wow.
Well, actually, let me amend that. I just thought about, it's probably a little bit lower than that, probably in the 80s. I just remembered something else we have going on, and there's quite a few people on it. Are we thinking is it going to be a huge, you said, I think a couple months back, I heard you quoted somewhere saying you're excited for what you can do in 19 now you have full staff. So are we getting some feature rich stuff, would you say 19 has got a big mode expansion, kind of like 18 had MUT squads? It is amazing that you were short staffed and we're still able to get MUT squads in, by the way. And well, MUT squads was made by a very small group of motivated people. It was pushed for late MUT squads, and the team really didn't start working on it until late October. And so, it got off to a slow start, and it had a very small team of people who just cared.
Hey, this is Gut Fox after the fact. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty here, but just want to let you know we are continuing, but it's not going to make sense from where we were to where we're starting off. So just bear with us, and let's get right back to it. Yeah.
The long-winded thing I was talking about is just as a design. I don't know how far you got, but the main thing is we're too small a team to keep going wider and wider and wider with modes without causing atrophy and problems. So I think we need to get back to focusing on our core loops, which is franchise, MUT, and gameplay.
I gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's more of a refinement year is kind of what you're saying next year in 19?
There's a couple stories that are way bigger than a refinement. I'm just not going to talk about them because it's way more than just a refinement, but specifically targeted at those areas I just mentioned.
Ah, interesting. So CFM upgrade, since you've been put on the CFM mode, I'm kind of excited to see what that is, because we talked about in our podcast the first time about connected franchise mode and how it seems like you guys had abandoned it in the previous few years, and it really haven't had any updates. I think there was 1 or 2 updates from 17 to 18 into CFM, but it's encouraging, I guess, for that mode to hear that it might be focused on this next year. But of
It
course,
will be focused on, not primary focused on. And I'm saying that, I mean, like, when I say MUT, franchise, and gameplay are the core loops, and that's where everyone is spending most of their time, that's where we need to invest.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think is the biggest issue with gameplay right now, outside of like disconnects and the lag on PS4?
Oof. Wow. Where do I start? There's so many different angles I could take on this. Like, I have different answers if you're talking competitive than if you're talking kind of
Competitive. I think everybody, we mostly...
Competitive, the obvious thing is the meta. And kind of what's happening is that we don't have all of the rules we need on defense to stop all of the offensive concepts. Football is really complicated.
Yeah.
And when you start having, like, when people talk about the corner route and what's supposed to defend the corner route, and it's actually like a cover 4 deep zoner is supposed to come down, but there's like all these rules involved in that, and every single one of those rules needs to be built in. Where we struggle internally sometimes, and I don't like to admit this, but I will, is that when we come to the table and we pitch something like, oh, we're going to build these new match rules for defenders so that they see 2 going vertical and 3 going across, they know not to go vertical with 1, but they're supposed to go. But there's this rule that if 3 goes, and by this time the producers have been like, what? Like, we can't sell that.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, you don't understand. This is just basic football. We need to implement these zone rules. And they're like, all right, pitch us something we can sell. And so this is where we struggle, because it's really hard to get the technical stuff going, because EA is a marketing-driven company, and they don't want to be pitched really technical football stuff. Guys like Clint and I, we have to sneak that stuff in with extra capacity. Like, that's how hard it is there, because a lot of the people we're selling the vision to, they don't play Madden extensively, and they don't know football extensively, and that's why they're like, well, can we just get the David Tyree catch? Can we just get the Odell Beckham one-handed grab? And we're just like, oh my god, like, you can't build a game around one fucking catch. But like, these are the frustrating things I deal with on a daily basis.
So you need those back of the box wow features in addition to the technical aspects that you guys put in the game.
In my opinion, there does need to be a balance of those two things, but EA internally has an issue where they invest over heavily on the big back of box wow, and that comes at the expense of too many core systems, especially when it comes to Madden.
Huh. That's really interesting, because I thought, I don't know, I think the gameplay has just gotten better, like the technical stuff. I know you say you sneak it in, but you guys are doing a really good job these last couple of years sneaking in improvements to gameplay, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But the way our executives kind of look at it is when there's a BuzzFeed article that comes out that's filled with Madden glitches, and they look at a thing called it's like this survey they send out, and one of the top detractors in the survey was gameplay, and it listed a bunch of stuff like fumbles, interceptions, zones, blah blah blah, and they took that as, wow, gameplay is one of our leading detractors this year. And so that's kind of like the stuff we deal with. And I'm like, no, the core community is actually really happy right now. And they're like, but this data in this survey said, and I'm like, oh, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what we deal with.
Yeah, you deal with a very hardcore audience on Twitter, the competitive guys. It seems like the competitive community rules Twitter and rules a lot of the feedback on that method. But like the larger survey going to the general population, that's a completely different engaged population than with the hardcore people that you normally deal with. So I can see where there's a little bit a disconnect between those two, the surveys and what you hear from the competitive guys. I can imagine that's tough to bring them together. I guess I got nothing else. Texas, do you have anything on those two communities?
I do not.
Okay. All right.
It's a tough challenge. I'll tell you this. After 6 years of working there and on this franchise, I'm not even sure a casual Madden player actually exists.
Really?
I think I understand who they are. Like, it's like your cousin or your kid brother who likes to just lob aggressive catches to Gronk on his all-pro team every play. But I think they're few and far between. I think really what we're talking about is hardcore sim hardcore competitive, and then everybody else who falls into what we call a mid-core category. Meaning you play the game, you like the game, but you're not like playing it hundreds of hours a given year. And that all our hardcore guys really put in, it's their big game that they play every year. But to date, I have yet to really zero in on a casual market who comes in and buys Madden and plays Madden. I know there's executives who want us to attack that market, but I have yet to really see it work out.
I mean, most of the casual community this day and age is playing free-to-play games, so I can see why it would be tough to get them in Madden.
Yeah, and if you think about things strategically, the way things are going in gaming is services. When you pick up a game and you commit to it, you're committing to a service. You're going to invest hundreds of hours, play with your friend, invest in the progression loops, invest in the reward loops, all that stuff. And so it kind of changes the model, because now essentially all the people you want to keep in your ecosystem are your core. And therefore, core becomes most important. They're the people who are already playing your game, already enjoying your game. And now the primary, definition of success is engagement. How long can I keep these people playing my game? And can I get them back next year? Mm-hmm. And so the model has changed. It's not as much to me about annual package good sales growth. It's about how happy is my core community and are they growing?
Is that why you guys gave out a lot of MUT reward copies to the on Twitch, the people watching Madden on Twitch? You gave them away on people following the Twitter account, that kind of stuff, to keep those people coming back and lower that that barrier of entry to the game?
Yes, and also we haven't done a great job managing our relationship with our community. Now, this recent switch where marketing and a group we call Digicoms works directly with YouTubers and streamers to try to, instead of spending millions of dollars on a marketing commercial, they're now trying to push all that out to the community so the community will market the game for us. Mm-hmm. Or, if not market it for us, then at least they're using the game as their platform. And it's hard. I didn't realize how complicated this stuff was, but we all were there supporting Toke at launch, and he came down to visit us, and we had a great sit down, and we gave him all these codes, and a month later he was gone and working with some website, and we had to okay, can't talk to him anymore. And there's other people who they want money to come fly out to our events, and people who you think are promoters and on your side will suddenly turn on you and spit all kinds of venom about the game. And we're just kind of working our way through this. And you look at something like what happened at the Classic, when somebody's out there on our stage, on our event that we're paying for and putting out to 10,000 people, and he's trashing the game. These things we have meetings about and say okay, how do we screw this up? What went wrong? How can we do better next time? And I feel like this is brand new territory, and a lot of game companies are now trying to utilize more of their community and drive more of their community to help promote. And it's really complicated, touchy stuff.
Yeah, I know, because the classic, the best way of marketing is word of mouth marketing. If your buddy says, "Hey, you should pick this up. It's a good game," and because the buddy wants to have them play MUT squads with them, have them grind MUT together, that's a much better way of marketing the game, like you say. And I guess I got a lot of stuff to talk about the community. We'll get into it. Texas, do you have any words on the community before we get really deep into it?
No. I mean, community, like I said earlier, is just going to find a way to complain about a lot of things, but their heart's in the right place for the most part. But that's all I got to say about it. Yeah.
I want to say one more thing on this. I kind of been ranting about it recently, but I think it's important. If you're a Madden streamer or a Madden YouTuber and you're all over social media telling everyone the game is trash, you're not helping grow your platform. I just don't understand it. It's like a bunch of actors in a TV show looking into the camera and saying, "God, this show sucks. God, this writing is terrible. Why are you even watching this?" And it's if you're going to choose Madden to be your platform, you shouldn't be trashing it. That's not going to help your channel grow. That's not going to help the community grow. It's not going to help the game grow. Now, Clint and I own a certain responsibility here to make sure that the game is not, broken. But I'll never understand why people who have committed to Madden as their streaming platform go out of their way to try to convince people how terrible the game is. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like cutting off your nose to spite your face there. And I think here's the dual side of it. I've put out positive and negative statements about the game and things that you guys have done. I will say the engagement on the negative ones are far higher. You get a lot more feedback saying this is a problem. I think people tend to see that feedback saying this is a problem in the game, and then they keep going at it because they keep getting people hitting that like button on their tweet, and likes and views and all that stuff feels good. So I have noticed that something like, even though in the long run it probably hurts, it hurts the game and maybe their community, but if it in the short run it feels like you're, I don't know, reaching people with that kind of talk.
There's a constructive way to provide feedback and say the following needs to be fixed. What I question is the value of tweeting into the Twitter sphere, this game trash AF. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you saying that hasn't already been said a billion times about every video game? And when you say, like, this game's trash, or this game's unplayable, it's so stupid. Like, why waste everybody's time by tweeting that?
Yeah.
Everybody says that about every video game. At least put something out there that the developer can use to make the game better for you.
Yeah, I agree that there's the way of doing it and the better way of doing that. I was just saying that, like, you're going to get more likes by saying the game is trash. And you said that's all around gaming. There's a reason, because it's the feedback loop that I was talking about. But, like, I don't know. So whenever I try to critique one specific thing. Texas, I know you do the same. Any thoughts on being negative versus positive about the game, Texas?
That's with anything in life, with negative and positivity. I don't know if you go check out Amazon reviews, you always see more negative than you do positive, because people just like to complain about the stuff on there. The product worked fine. It just didn't work the way they thought it was going to. And so nobody really is going out of the way to post positive reviews, just because.
Here's the thing.
I don't know why that is, but
if you're positive about a game, you're going to play it. You're not going to go on Amazon and leave a review. You're only going to leave a review if you're pissy and you want other people to know why you're pissy. And so that's why you never see positive reviews. But I would encourage you to maybe go on Metacritic and check out the user score for Madden this year versus 2K versus FIFA and see how we're doing.
Okay, I'm going there now.
Gotcha. Well, it's better than 2K has, because 2K is broken. Like, I don't know what's going on with 2K this year, but that game was broken for a while. You couldn't even play with your friends in Pro-Am, which is 5v5. They're on the East Coast. You couldn't play with them if you lived on the West Coast, because there was like server issues. So it was like, I bought this game and played with my friends, and I can't. At least Madden, even though Mud Squad is kind of shaky at the beginning, it kind of stabled out towards later in the year, so it actually became more playable. But yeah, 2K was broken, so I bet Madden has a higher score based off 2K.
Madden I see has an 82 and 2K has an 81. So Madden does beat 2K this year in Metacritic.
Look at the user score.
Oh, okay. I didn't actually go deep into it.
It's like Rotten Tomatoes for like games. I didn't know you had one of those.
Oh, the Madden user score is 4.2.
And what's 2K?
I'll look that up. 2K.
4.2 is pretty good.
1.7 for NBA 2K. Yeah, so
and I made this joke the other day, because we're playing 2K. I'm like, and people really want 2K to make a football game. They can't even get this game right. That's not gonna go well. That's not gonna go well.
It's really hard to make a sports game.
Yeah, and to be fair, Madden has got this competition already up with Access Football and Canadian football. So watch yourself, Rex. The Canadians are coming.
CFL.
Mutant League football just launched. Did you know that?
No, Mutant League. Let me look that up. I hear
it's pretty good on Steam.
I didn't see that.
Mutant League?
Oh, it's got 90. Yeah, it's 9 out of 10. Yeah.
There you go. Competition.
All right, talk more about back to Madden in the community. So you talked about chaos when he screamed out, "This game is so bad" live on the competitive Madden stage. And you're broadcasting 10,000 people, and I looked up the social blade for the EA Madden Twitch over those 2 days, and it was 130,000 views over those 2 days. Now, there's like 10 Madden YouTubers right now that get that many views on a daily basis, and you guys spent $150,000 on that prize pool for that Madden Classic, and you got fewer views than these Madden YouTubers do daily. Like, was that return on investment worth it for the competitive?
Oh man, this thing is not about the short game, my friend. Esports is about the long game. And I think esports football especially has kind of it's watchable in a way that some others aren't, because there's something familiar about when you watch it on TV. It actually, if you like football and you watch football, you're like, hey, I can follow this. It makes sense what people are doing. But I think Matt Marcou is playing a long game and EA is playing a long game. To assume that we're going to pull League of Legends numbers and sell out stadiums in our first, second, third year of this thing is kind of ludicrous. That was never really the intent, I don't think. I think the intent was to inspire more people to become professional Madden players, or at least take their shot. And it's really about adding value to the overall kind of cultural relevancy of the franchise, more than it was we need to get advertiser money or network money. I haven't even heard that yet. I'm sure that there's tons of sponsors who want to come in and get involved, but we're not ready for that yet. And nobody's in a rush to kind of build revenue out of this. We get enough revenue from other areas that we can let this thing grow and evolve into what we want it to be. And maybe someday we will sell out the Staples Center. Who knows? Mm-hmm.
So I saw I forgot who was I think it was CMAD or something tweeting about how EA, you guys are really are you focused on growing competitive Madden to grow competitive Madden, or is it more because in your financial statements you guys said that you wanted to grow? What's up?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You said you wanted to grow competitive Madden because those players generally spend more money on the game. Is it about just growing it as an esport, or growing it to get more consumers playing the game and spending on MUT in the MUT modes?
It's not so much about getting people into MUT to spend. The franchise is an old mode. It's been around for forever. And a lot of the people who play franchise are kind of guys like me who've been playing Madden forever. MUT is where Gen Z is going. And when we say Gen Z, I mean the young kids coming up now. And competitive, we call it the competitive achiever audience segment internally. That seems to be all the rage these days. All the kids are flocking to COD multiplayer or Battlefield multiplayer. Destiny 2, the Crucible is a big focus. And so what we're seeing is a lot of the next generation is all about skill and competition are their primary factors. And so we're just kind of following that lead. It just happens to lead to MUT, where where all the competitive players seem to be conglomerating. And so that's one of the reasons why it feels like we're pushing more emphasis there. It's really not about that. It's just about we've been building a simulation game, an authentic NFL simulation game for almost 30 years now, and it's only 2 years now that was this the first? Is this still the first year? The second year of CG of competitive Madden, and the second year of competitive playstyle. We've just started servicing the needs of the competitive community for the first time in God knows how many years. Mm-hmm. So that's just why it feels like there's an overemphasis right there right now. This is the first time they've actually gotten our attention. Okay,
because I do think constructing your roster and salary cap through the MUT mode, I like that, and seeing what players guys choose to execute their game plan over everybody just using the same two franchise teams, Atlanta and Seattle, the whole time. So I can see why you guys moved. Is there, Tex, is there anything you want to talk about or ask about with competitive moving to MUT and salary cap and stuff and draft champions?
Will we ever see a regular MUT tournament? Because it seems like you kind of want to restrict their lineup. So I didn't really like I did like the usage of the two teams. I guess at that point it came down to who was a better user with that specific team. But like, are we ever going to see like a regular MUT tournament where with a MUT team involved, or is it just too obnoxious?
You mean like unlimited? Like you can
Yeah.
use
Yeah,
whatever
like
team you want?
yeah, like so no salary cap. Because salary cap's cool. I think that's better mode to test skill. But like, I just want to see kind of the best players.
About a MUT unlimited tournament. I think the main pushback on that is I don't think anyone wants to see the tournament feel like it's you have to pay to compete. So you have to have like a 99 OVR MUT team to even play. I think that sends the wrong message. Now you could make an argument about, the first tournament being on regs and, whether that was appropriate or not, or the issue of seeing everybody choose Falcons or Seahawks. But I'm actually happy that they gave, a mode outside of MUT some love and some coverage and kind of showed that you can have competitive Madden in kind of different formats. But yeah, I think the main reason why they don't do unlimited is because they don't want it to feel like you have to spend thousands or hundreds of dollars to have a competitive MUT team, at a 90 overall MUT team.
Yeah, that makes sense. So wait, you talked about Marcou earlier. Does he also report to you, or is that a different structure?
Different structure.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
Competitive gaming division is a whole separate division within EA, and he reports into the head of that.
Okay, because the head of that, did you guys get a new one? Because didn't Peter Moore leave? Did you guys replace him?
His Peter Moore's replacement is an executive who's been with EA for quite some time. His name is Todd Citron.
Okay, and
he is then the head of the competitive gaming division now.
Okay.
He's a really smart guy. He's been with EA for years.
Awesome. That's really cool. One other thing I want to circle back to something you said a little earlier about kind of keeping the same guys in the community year round. I think I forgot where I heard it, but I think Andrew Wilson said something about giving like one subscription model to EA games going forward. You pay for this and you stay in it all year, because really MUT and the MUT modes bring in a lot of revenue, and maybe the more people you bring into MUT, the more revenue you get out of it. So you don't really need as many game sales if MUT is making up more revenue and the Ultimate Team modes. Is that something you've heard of, that EA games are going to like a year-round access, that you can access all of them? Like EA Access but expanded? Or
I think there's a long-range desire to figure out a model like that.
Okay.
But I don't see it in the immediate future.
Okay.
We talk about it all the time. It's kind of the way people are consuming games now.
Yeah.
But this whole digital transformation has happened so fast that I think everyone's just kind of like, if I'm trying to think of a good example, but if you kind of look at it, have you played any Destiny 2?
No.
All right, so when you play that game, it feels like more like a service that's ongoing. It's kind of in the same way that Madden Ultimate Team does, where they have seasonal promos and stuff's dropping every other week, new stuff to do, new stuff to play. Like that's kind of the model moving forward. And if you look at the top 10 games, top selling games of last year, I think all but 2 of them were one-to-one that type of model, like a live service model that's constantly pushing out new content for you to play throughout the year. That's probably where we're headed.
It's interesting that you say that, because MMOs and stuff like World of Warcraft and stuff have kind of like gone down, but you're kind of saying all the other games are kind of just becoming MMOs, putting out that content where people are like continually in the environment all year, and it's a large hour sink. So that's interesting how like MMOs are dying, but really they're just evolving. Other games are evolving into MMOs.
Well, yeah, console games are kind of stealing MMO ideas because they've realized that if you can keep a gamer engaged in your ecosystem all year long, that has infinitely greater benefits than if they're done with your game after 15, 20 hours. And so you'll see a lot of conversations online these days about the death of the single player campaign. And I certainly don't think that we're going to see the death of the single player game, but if you think about, like, if I were to go and build, let's say, a new Wolfenstein game with no multiplayer and a 10-hour single-player campaign, or I was to tell you I'm going to go build something like Destiny 2, which is built to keep people playing all year long and have new content drops and engage and re-engage and engage and re-engage. I think it's an obvious decision, a business decision about where you want to put your dollars.
Is that I know? Didn't Visceral get shut down because they were making single player games?
That's a gross oversimplification of what happened, but no, that's actually not true. Sometimes in EA, the pieces just don't come together. And then Kotaku actually wrote a really nice article where they went through the whole history of what happened. The real reason why Visceral got shut down, in my opinion, was because you have the pressure of the director of Uncharted is your creative director, and you have a Star Wars license, and this isn't a team that has built tons of games together in that vein. That's a lot of top-down pressure to build something that would equal anything that Naughty Dog could put out. And that's too much pressure, I think, for any new team to bear.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
That's my take on it anyway. Go read that Kotaku article if you're interested, though.
Yeah, I'll definitely check.
It's really not about single-player games dying. It's just about that the closed-loop linear model is probably dying. It makes a lot more sense to go more sandbox and more like the whole idea of keeping people playing your game longer is kind of intrinsic upon the new way of developer thinking.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I found the article. I'll take a look at it after the interview. Texas, any thoughts on single player versus the MMO style and keeping players engaged?
I mean, thinking about it right now, it makes sense though, because like even though I like Fallout, I didn't play much of Fallout because after you beat it, it's not much else you can really do. You got the DLC that comes out, but besides that, you don't really stay engaged in that game all year long. And even if I didn't really post Madden to YouTube, like I would probably more than likely play this game all year long because of the constant updates and the drops of new content. So that is a better way to go to keep your audience engaged, stimulated the entire year.
I've actually never understood it. Like if you look at COD right now, that campaign, the single player campaign, is completely disconnected from the rest of the experience. It's a different character. The story has nothing to do with multiplayer. Progression isn't shared. And any time you spend in that single player campaign is basically lost time towards the progression that you make in the rest of the game. And so, when you think about how much they have to spend to build that, it's probably at least a 40, 50-person team on the single-player campaign, cinematics, level design, AI, scripting. And most people who buy that game are going to be done with that campaign in the first week. And the rest of the year, they're going to be playing multiplayer. And so I kind of question whether those investments are even worth it anymore. Like, is it really just to bring people in on week one? They're going to pay $60, spend 10 hours and play through your campaign and never touch your game again? I struggle to believe that that's how people are playing games anymore. I think most of these people are jumping into the service, which is the multiplayer, and that's where they're spending their time because it's deep and the progression has rewards, and those upgrading your gun and upgrading your character takes weeks, if not months. And that's what people love these days. So
Rex, that reminds me a lot of Longshot. What you said about the single player and bringing people into the game to kind of hook them into the multiplayer. So how do you justify Longshot because it wasn't really tied into MUT much?
Well, how do I justify Longshot? Frostbite is probably the first justification that it afforded us the opportunity through cinematic tool sets to go after something like this because these pipelines already existed within Frostbite. The second thing was this thing that as the best way to describe it is they felt, and when I say they, I mean there's obviously a lot of people involved in Madden strategy, everything from marketing to producers, executives, etc. Felt that the best way to attract new players was to build a new kind of story-based mode. Even people who didn't know football and didn't understand football. And that's one of the reasons why Longshot doesn't go to the NFL, because they wanted to keep it really simple and just kind of rekindles people's love for football. And so that was the attempt. And, Critically, I think it was hugely successful for us. Strategically, I think the jury's still out, but people liked it and it was meaningful to them. I often struggle with the investment myself because I'm a core guy and I focus on core things and core modes and core gameplay. But kudos to the team. They pulled off something that, I thought, when I saw that creative, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be really hard, guys. And they crushed it, and a lot of people loved it. So props to them.
Yeah, I do agree. Like going into it, I was very skeptical, but after playing it, I was like, okay, that was pretty cool. I kind of enjoyed it, and I kind of want to ask you, like, you talked about strategy going forward with that long shot. Like you kind of, I asked you this in the first interview, so I'm going to repeat it again so we can hear what you have to say. Many developers like you and Clint talking about making the game more skill gap based and courting the hardcore audience. You spent so many resources making the game harder, but so many more resources also creating the long shot mode that's essentially for beginners. So does it feel like EA doesn't have a firm direction forward for where they want their game? Like it seems like you're constantly fighting with the upper management about where to go with this game. Like do they feel like they just know a better direction forward to try to court those casuals?
Yes, I would say when an executive is faced with the challenge of growing a brand or growing a franchise, especially one that's as old and kind of core as Madden is and complicated as Madden is, there's this natural kind of lean towards, we could build something for the casuals and bring in this mass market Timmy Target and Willie Walmart. And I've seen it over and over and I have yet to see it work. And they just, people just want to keep trying because they think maybe we just don't have the right idea yet. But when I look around across the industry, I don't see it ever working this way. When I look at successful titles, I see what they're doing is building from their core out. That when their core gamers are happy and they're promoting and they're evangelizing the game and telling their friends how great it is and that they have to play it, a game can pick up a kind of a viral heat to it. And I personally think that that's the way to grow this brand. And where I struggle is that a lot of people are like, hey, those core users you're talking about feeding, they've been with us for 20 years and they're going to be with us for 20 more. And so continuing to feed people that we already have in our pocket doesn't make sense to some people. And this has been sort of my crusade,
Nice.
if you will,
Yeah.
For the last 5 years.
I gotcha. Texas, do you have any thoughts on casual in the long shot versus the skill gap in the hardcore?
Well, I had a question about Longshot. So I'm pretty sure I remember hearing somebody say Longshot took 4 years to develop, but obviously it took like the past year or two, whatever it's been, where it's all the bulk stuff has been kind of the groundwork's been laid. Is there any reason this wasn't outsourced like a Telltale studio to work on it? Since I know some other games do that. So the Arkham makes Batman, but they also license the Batman stuff out to Telltale to make a Batman style game.
I don't think so. I think there was enough people on the team who were motivated and wanted to try something different, kind of wanted to take a break from working on the same Madden every year, that Longshot was attractive enough that they wanted to build it internally.
Okay. I did hear Longshot had a 50% engagement rate, which is kind of high, don't you think? That's good. So would you consider that a success?
50% of new players played Longshot?
I think it was just all players, wasn't it? I thought I saw that in the somebody linked that from your recent quarterly close from EA.
I know they had good throughput to MUT for people who finished it. They also, the stat they had about the number of people who finished the mode versus Thief's Journey was significantly higher. What we haven't seen, so like I said earlier, critically and creatively, Longshot was a slam dunk successfully. I'm still waiting to see how the strategic part of it, which was bring in new users, plays out.
Okay. One more thing I want to circle back on with the community, and I think, and then Twitch drops. I want to say that was a great idea you guys got with Twitch drops and the Twitch Legends. That was great. Now, is there any chance? Do you oversee that kind of that communication type stuff on Madden, or is that a different department from you?
Which communication?
So like you mentioned earlier with the community communication, those engaged like the Kralo and Guru, are they in your shop?
Yep.
Okay, they are. So
Kralo's a new, like, he's basically the top community manager now.
Okay.
As far as I'm not, Guru's role has changed a little bit. He's kind of more like on the marketing PR side of it, but I still heavily rely on his advice. Yeah. And I go out of my way to tell MUT leadership that he is someone who needs to be listened to.
He kind of seems like not in your shop, not there, kind of like a wild card, MUT Guru out there. No, I'm just kidding. So with the Twitch drops, do you think there's a chance to make them available to like every single person streaming Madden, or is there a specific strategy to only give it one person one night a week for those Twitch drops?
Not my program. I think their strategy was to spread it around. But as I was alluding to earlier, EA corporate gets very nervous very easily. There's legal teams who get spooked, and you're like, okay, we want to feature this streamer, and they're like, okay, have you done your due diligence? Does he swear on his stream? Has he said anything about EA? Has he been disparaging? Are there any like racist tweets we should know about? And like the legwork that you have to do to clear all that is pretty significant. But I do think the original intent was to try to mix it up and give it to a different streamer each week.
I gotcha. So it wouldn't be just because I know some games do it to like everybody streaming their game, but Madden would never do that. That's fine. So I guess circling back to the actual gameplay and specifically aggressive catch. Now, how do you balance the fun versus competitive? Like, I in my opinion, there's no more exciting play in football than when the ball is high in the air, traveling 50 yards downfield. In Madden 16, we had that ability to come down with those shots, those one-on-one shots. But in 18, basically, if you throw it deep, it's a wasted down. Why did you decide to take those aggressive shots out of the game and allow players to basically play one-on-one over the top?
Well, 16 was a really successful year overall. But, the community was really unhappy with that game. And basically, overwhelming majority said that aggressive catch ruined the game that year. And so the following year, we put in the SWAT mechanic, which, felt pretty good. Mm-hmm. And didn't get much complaints that year. This year, the big change has been the aggressiveness of the zones. And so when they break a little earlier, since most people have like the thresholds now, they put themselves in positions to pick the ball off versus triggering those multiplayer catches that the receivers could win. And that has had the biggest impact. And that's kind of like, it was never kind of our intent to nerf the aggressive catch that severely, but it's really just the AI of the defenders and people making poor reads that are allowing them to pick those balls off. I will say, though, I think I don't want to go back to a place where someone's going to win the Madden championship just lobbing aggressive catches to Gronk. I don't know if you remember, but that's basically what happened.
Yeah, I've talked to Stiff about it.
Not good for the game.
But that was, I mean, the reason he won is because he was able to A-gap Problem in that game, and Problem didn't know how to block it on that big dime A-gap that Stiff had up his sleeve. So the aggressive catch, I mean, that was golden ticket Gronk, the best receiver in the game, going against a rookie Jalen Ramsey. And I mean, isn't that on Problem to, like, how much of this game is it for the competitors to adjust to the game that you put out versus your job to adjust to the game that they want? It's
a careful balance, right? And in the game, I could show you a million real world clips of receivers catching a ball in double or triple coverage. It happens all the time, every single weekend. The problem is if we let people just lob it to a highly rated receiver, and he's got even a 25% chance to catch that ball in coverage, there's no reason for people to not do that every single down, because they're going to end up catching one of those four, and that's how they're going to run their whole offense. And we saw that in 16. And so building a game where the meta is lob the ball up high into a guy in coverage and let his ratings basically dictate that he's going to catch it is not a functional model in my eyes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
It's a shitty meta.
Yep. And so with the shitty meta, how do you feel about it right now? Basically, we have one of four defenses people are running, from cover 4, drop show 2, Tampa 2 with the middle linebacker in a deep zone, the 46 speed package in cover 3, and then a looping blitz. How do you determine whether a meta is shitty and needs change versus in a healthy place?
I listen and I watch. I watch a lot of competitive Madden, and I listen to players. And the fact that you just mentioned like 4 or 5 different looks on defense is a sign to me we're moving in the right direction. I think offense this year is a little bit sort of
stale.
I wouldn't say stale, but like too homogenous. I don't know whether that's really the game or it's just people going and reacting to like what's hot on YouTube or what the most popular ebook is. I'm actually a little disappointed that more people aren't kind of coming out of the woodworks running their own custom shit that nobody's seen before. And I'll take some of that heat, but I think a lot of that actually does have to do with the easily available ebooks and YouTube videos.
Yeah. Well, about the easily available ebook and YouTube videos, most of what I've seen, and not to disparage fellow content creators, it's not very good out there. So shots fired. But like, all you have to do is watch one of the competitive guys on Twitch and stuff to get what they're running, and it feels like it's a very run heavy meta right now on offense, especially in salary cap. You get the toss and the dive and stretch inside. So it feels like, are you okay with the meta being very run heavy, whereas like in the NFL it's very pass heavy?
I haven't felt like it's. I don't know if you disagree with this, but depending on who I'm watching, I don't feel like it's been that run heavy.
Oh, well, okay. Let me rephrase this. The top end competitive guys, like Skimbles does nothing but pass, and he's very good, and they've got exceptional skills. When I'm talking about the meta, I mean just online head-to-head, where we're facing a lot of stretch, toss, dive, and occasionally inside zone, but more the first 3. And
you know why that is? The only reason why that is because people are afraid to throw the ball.
Yeah.
Because we tune the zones because that's people want it. And so, the lesser players now have devolved into running the game and throwing drags. And you know what? That's the skill gap. Like, if you can't throw a post or a mountain route, or you can't throw a deep out or a deep in against these new zones, there's your skill gap. Because there's people who can do it, and there's people who can run route combinations that get open against our zones. But the people that are doing that successfully and consistently, that's top 1%. That's exactly the way the game should be.
That's a fair point. Texas, any thoughts on the meta?
No. I mean, I don't think I have any thoughts on it other than hopefully it evolves soon, because I'm tired of getting halfback whammed to death. It's the most frustrating thing in the world, considering because like sometimes my defense stops, sometimes they don't. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
You don't have whammy?
I mean, like sometimes I don't gotta do anything. I just come out there, my D tackle block sheds and tackles the guy in the backfield. Sometimes
Evan Ingram search whammy. Add 18 wham.
Wait, look it up.
Yeah. So I have wham D, but it frequently exposes me to tight end angle out of that deuce close, which it's whatever. It is what it is. So okay, on that, like, what do you? When is a play so degenerative that you need to balance it? Have you ever gotten to the place where you're like, we got to take that play out of the game because it's so good? Like, I think the last time I saw that was Madden 15 with the PA end around. Have you ever thought that before?
Some stuff comes up. Like there was a bubble screen this year, which was messed up, and I think we took it out.
Bubble screens were really bad. Yeah.
Yeah. I know we've had the tune option before because of some stuff people had figured out, and that'll happen sometimes when there's a money play. I know Mike Scrape that one year got a lot of look. That just kind of like everybody was running the same. Even people that didn't know how to set up the blitz out of it were running that defense over and over and over. They thought it was the cool thing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, less and less over the years. Has that been like a major thing?
Okay. Yeah. All right. So all right, Nickel Blitz 2 last year. Like that didn't get patched all year, and that was kind of what everybody ran for the last part of the whole year. So
yep.
Do you go in, you specifically try and change the meta every time you do a patch? Is that true or not?
False.
Okay. When
patches are about giving the community the fixes they want, and some of that is tuning.
Okay. So like you have a lot of analytics and numbers that show how many yards each play gets per play call. What would you say is too many yards per play call? And at that point, you got to look at that and say, I got to patch this rep.
It's not that simple because certain plays are designed to hit deep, and so yards gained would not be a good indicator. It's usually based on like what are people running. So like what are the top most frequently called plays. And then we start looking at those plays and say, why are people running this? And usually there's probably an answer in there somewhere. Like some of the, what's a good example? I think one of the reasons why people run wham is that wham handoff is a little bit faster, I think, than a normal dive. And so that's why people go to it, because it actually releases you faster than a normal dive handoff would.
Huh. Is that something that would
believe?
Is that something that would be looked at in a future patch?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if we're patching that one. That's not like a big enough issue where we patch it. I just know that some of those handoffs, and specifically the wham, is a little bit faster than the others, which is why people gravitate to it. But it's not a big enough problem that I feel we need to patch it.
Okay. So about that, I heard a lot today and yesterday on Twitter from some YouTubers about an adaptive AI. What does that mean to you, and what are your thoughts on making an adaptive AI to players running the same play over and over again?
There's a designer at work who's been pitching this for 3 years. He really, 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 really wants it. And I always have the same problem with it, and I have yet to hear anyone give me a satisfactory solution to this problem, which is when your AI defender feels like he recognized something. So you put him in a hard flat, and he's like, oh, nope, they're running this play because I recognize they've been running slants all game. He's going to go across the middle. I'm going to go to my hook zone. And now all of a sudden that defender does something differently than what you told him to do, meaning you put him in a hard flat, and he went somewhere else because he remembered something. And then user completes a pass to the flats on you.
Mm-hmm.
Who was right? Who was wrong? Well, the game was wrong because he overrode the user's decision. And until I see a satisfactory solution to that problem I just created, I'm not going to roll that feature out.
I guess the only thing I could think of off the top of my head was just to increase stats. If a player, if the offense runs the same play 3 times in a game, the thing is, like, with a lot of plays, people use adjustments.
What has your opponent done to serve that? Like what fictional thing suddenly existed to make your players better?
Like
it's
like
weird.
They'd increase
those ideas work.
Like they'd increase their zone coverage or play rec to recognize that play in order to break on it faster, for example. I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like a built-in punishment against people who like to run the same stuff. I'm more of the opinion, and I think most competitive players feel the same way. Get good and figure out how to stop the thing. Like the other night, somebody ran levels on me, and basically, if I took the crossing route, he would throw the seam, and if I took the seam, he would throw the crossing route. And it took me the whole game to figure out what to call to stop it. And eventually, I figured it out. I figured out a defense that took both away and knew what I had to take as a user and what my AI could take. But it took me the whole game to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Why should the game do that for me? I don't buy into it.
Yeah. I think a lot of the issues with seam routes right now. I don't think vert hooks actually go vert with streak routes from like the tight end. Is that supposed to not go vertical past 15 yards?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I always use the cover 3 match when I'm worried about the seam because the hooks owners will carry.
Yeah, because it's a man match. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest issue with Madden, outside of whatever, like disconnects, I think the biggest issue with your game is the fact that people see players running 2 plays the whole game. They'll pitch and they'll dive the whole game, and then they'll win the game off those 2 plays. And they get frustrated. And yeah, they're not the competitive guys. They're not the top 200 players in the world that know how to stop those 2 plays. Now, is that your job to make the game more balanced, like those 2 plays not to be able to be run the whole game? Or is it the player's job to do that, to stop that cheese?
We have to give them better base rules. Because basically, if we're missing rules like banjo, for example,
okay,
then there's certain defensive concepts that don't work. And so when I go to my play designer guy and I'm like, hey, why isn't a purple zone stopping a corner route? And he's like, what's a purple zone? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like this thing in Madden. It's on and he's like, no, that doesn't exist in real life. And I'm like, what? I'm like, why is it in the game if it doesn't exist? And he gets this whole breakdown of all these rules and this coverage and that coverage. And he's like, we have to add this, we have to add that, we have to add this. And when we're done with that, we'll have this, and then it'll work. That is the foundation of delivering working functional counters to every offensive concept. And until we finish that investment, and it's mainly in zone coverage, it's going to be, this is going to probably happen until we get that worked out. And then the next step after we get that worked out is, how do we teach the user what concept takes away rich routes?
That's a good point.
I don't want the AI to do it for you.
Yeah, and giving people the tools to stop certain plays, and that's something. The thing is, you've done that with a few of your features with ID the mic, the line shifting. You've taken away some of those ability to get nanos and taken away ways of kind of exploiting the game. So it's gone in the right direction in my opinion. Texas, what are your thoughts?
It has gone in the right direction. A few things can be tweaked there. I mean, I know Clint talked about this on Twitter with the guys hurdling over halfbacks and tight ends when you're blocking them. So there's stuff that obviously needs to be tuned, but it has gotten better from what we have been like demanding we had in this game, like since like Madden 13 when I was playing. Because when you know somebody's blitzing, you'll be able to at least like, I know that's gonna come here. Can you at least block it? So it has gotten much better from that aspect. But yeah, you said earlier about the purple zones. I was gonna ask, one of the questions was like, how come purple zones don't really do what they're like kind of supposed to do? Because you're seeing a lot of guys this year switch over to cloud flash for everything. So the purples will switch over to cloud flash because cloud flash will guard out routes, they'll guard C routes, pretty much anything that comes over there. And plus, with the guy throwing to the flat, big hits can now cause fumbles. And so purples, I just don't understand. Like, so you pretty much sure like why they didn't cover like all those routes. So I guess because something that just has to be adjusted to.
Well, yeah, I mean, imagine my surprise when the designer told me, he's like, a purple zone doesn't exist in real football. And I was like, what? And so, you know, we got, he's like, Anthony White is a football coach. Like, he's like all he thinks about is real world football and real world rules. And he just needs more time to get the rest of the stuff in. It's a never ending list of how complex and how complicated defensive zone coverage rules are.
So why did you guys add purple routes into the game if they're not real and not supposed to do anything?
I think it's before my time.
Okay.
I would have to go figure out the answer to that. Like, this only happened recently when he was explaining to me that isn't an actual real world kind of zone. And I was like, oh, and I imagine it got born out of the desire to take away an outbreaking corner route or an outbreaking, deep out. That's my guess anyway. It came in before I got there.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. All right, Texas, do you got another question?
I don't right now. I can ask him something, a hard-hitting question if you want.
Oh, yeah, go ahead and ask that hard-hitting question.
All right, Rex, this question is not a softball. I'm lobbing you a hard one right now. What type of shampoo do you use?
God damn.
I think I use Dove. I don't know.
Terrible.
I don't really look at lost my hair for almost 20 years now. The last thing I think about is shampoo.
Yeah. Hey, I got another one. Does shading inside or outside in zone do anything?
Yes.
Does it? Okay.
It's which direction he'll try to press the guy.
Oh,
So
interesting.
If you shade him inside, he'll press him outside and try to not give up the inside break, and vice versa if you shade outside.
Because I've seen that work in man coverage. That they move in man coverage when you shade them. What side they press? I'm writing that down for future reference.
Okay, that's interesting.
So it feels to me that the spread formations aren't used as much in Madden as they are in the NFL. Madden players generally go to trips or tight formations. Why do you think that is?
It's because we're missing zone rules. The stuff I talked about earlier about, like, banjo technique, for example, like some of the rules the defensive use to defend compressed sets, there's stuff we still have to make investments in. But even if you look at kind of like, I was just watching some college football this weekend. A lot of people are actually running compressed sets, especially, down near the goal line with crossing routes and
Pick plays.
receivers running natural picks. And it seems to be kind of like a thing I'm seeing a lot of lately. And so it's probably just that some of the missing components on defense, the more like hardcore football rule stuff, would come into play against compressed sets, and that's one of the things we still have to get after.
Yeah. Hey, what happened to the spotlight feature this year? It doesn't seem to do anything.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't use that feature.
Okay. Yeah, I've tried to spotlight guys. When I talked about before, like pre-patch 1, those corner routes to the tight end and tight end angle, I try to spotlight them, and they'd still complete it. So, okay, I was just wondering if it.
Spotlight the same thing as like man coverage when you double a guy using man?
No, spotlight's like pay certain attention. Like in previous years, it'd be like pay extra attention to this receiver and play closer zones to him and try and take away his route. Like you're telling your defense to focus on that guy specifically.
Not familiar with that one.
Okay. All right. Texas, do you have another question?
Yes, with possession catching, this last tournament, you see a lot of guys possession catching, and some people have went on to say this possession catch is a new aggressive catch. I don't think there's any issue with it personally, but I only have a complaint with the interactions that defensive backs and linebackers get. Are there going to be a tuning update or a patch we're getting so that way if a guy goes to possession catch and a guy is near him, there's animation where they can attack them? Because it seems like when you go for the possession catch, you have 100% you're going to catch the ball no matter what, because the defenders don't get interaction or animation to jar that ball loose.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's back up, because one of the reasons why possession catch is being so popular this year is because of organic knockouts. And that thing is, if I get touched by a defender during my catch animation, the ball has a fairly good chance this year of coming out. And so, if you rack over the middle, even though you might have a step or two, if a defender comes in and happens to touch the ball, it kind of just pops out. And so I'm sure once you've lost a couple of long third down conversions that way, you're like, shoot, I better start possession catching this. That's why it's become more popular this year. Now, the reason that's actually something we're tuning in the next update, which is you will see or maybe it was in this last one, actually. I can't, my mind gets confused because I play on builds that have both in them. Mm-hmm. But one of the patches, either this last one or the one coming up, has a lot of that kind of like light glancing touch knockout stuff is now taken out. So you can feel more comfortable racking over the middle. To your question about AI response to a receiver possession catching, the way our AI system works is that usually by the time that receiver has started his possession catch, the defender is already in like, I'm going to try to catch this, or I'm going to try to hit you over the middle. And so by the time he's kind of committed to what he wants to do, the receiver has now started to go down, and he's already kind of committed to his action. Now, one of the big things we're investing in is this concept of animation blending, meaning I can be in one state and blend to another state based on situations around me. And I don't have to necessarily complete the animation that I'm currently in to try to blend to a different one. And so we'll probably experiment with that. So you can get cases where I'm coming in for the ball, But as soon as I see him drop and go down, I lower my hands and my shoulder and just try to use my momentum to lay a hit on him. Like that's something we could potentially go after.
Interesting. Texas, any thoughts on that or?
No, I think that. So I'm just trying to think because like it's just. I can say to wait till the next patch then because we got to see how it goes. And I can't really give a take on it right now because like right now it's kind of annoying when you know a guy's gonna possession catch and you just want to. And like I'm a big hit him like before he goes down, but like you can't attack him or nothing comes of it. So we'll see how this goes to the next patch. But I have nothing else right now.
Stick?
Try to say it again.
Cut stick.
The cut stick, I be trying to go lower high in this whenever they're in a possession catch, and sometimes I can interact with them. Sometimes I just don't get animation at all. They just go down with it every single time. So it seems like a possession catch, especially like right now, it's like 100% success rate, unless like you throw it like in traffic all the time. But if like I usually in the middle of the field, so a guy will throw it right at me to a running back, and he'll fall down all slowly, and I'm like I can't do anything to him. I'm like in real life he die. He get his head took off.
Yeah.
Like he'd be out of the game with a concussion because he's doing this on the middle of the field. My linebacker is gonna hit him while he's going low, and then he's gonna be out of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hey Rex, I asked you in the Lost interview about new celebrations in Madden, and you said wait until mid to late November for a patch to see what kind of or to see what kind of celebrations happen in the NFL. And then you guys were gonna add more celebrations based on what we see in the NFL. So are we going to see the Steelers celebrations, those team celebrations coming to Madden soon?
Maybe. I don't know how deep I can get into this. There's a piece of technology that we're looking at that is kind of like, right now our group celebrations are kind of like you have to have enough players around kind of the area to trigger it.
Okay.
Like it has to like send out a broadcast message and it has to be kind of in the radius to get it to happen. In order to get those larger group celebrations, we need a piece of new tech, which is kind of like either like a transition where we can like teleport them into place, or a smarter pathfinding system so that we can get everyone running to location and forming up together. But I'm kind of the opinion right now that based on what I've seen that I might hold that stuff back until that tech exists rather than try to force it in now and have it look ugly.
Okay. We've already seen the best celebration in Madden that I think we're ever going to see. That Gronk spike. I think where you hit the Browns player.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool. So Texas, do you have another question?
Yes, another question I'd ask. So I don't know if you played a game called Fortnite. It came out in July, like late July, and it's been popular now because they basically just kind of copied PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, but they made it before that game launches this next week with the Xbox One. They do weekly updates. So I was wondering how come Madden doesn't do that, or if Madden would do that in the future, just weekly updates, so that way we can kind of get things out that are kind of pressing. So like with y'all dropped the update where it kind of broke passing, but then y'all tuned it like a week later. Is there any way we can get that in Madden going forward?
Well, MUT already has that. Like MUT does weekly updates all the time. And when we talked earlier about a live service, and a live service is basically that, where a game can kind of put out content, put out like fixes. The only reason that one patch came out so quickly after the other one is because we did what we call an emergency patch, which is we basically communicate to first party and say, hey, look, the thing we just put out broke something and we need to fix it. And therefore, we need this whole exception. And the exception is like, we're only doing these one or two simple fixes. It's got, very little impact, low code risk. And so it's on a much tighter turnaround schedule because the publisher has identified that there's business impact if we don't get the patch out versus a normal update, which usually has like, several hundred fixes in it and requires weeks of testing and first party testing before we'll feel comfortable putting it out.
That makes sense.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But
yes, everything is moving towards live service and more frequent updates and features that drop 3 or 4 months after launch. In fact, there's a big one coming this year, maybe.
What? That's kind of interesting. I know you can't go into it, but a big feature coming. Huh.
That's breaking news.
Yeah, text. It could be anything. Even the Tavern Brawl mode that I've suggested for a couple years now, but maybe not. Anyways, I know you can't talk about it. Hopefully we'll see that soon in the game. I know. On we talked about this pre-podcast, but I know on Twitter you put a turkey in a tweet saying yeah. So
and we need to try this stuff. Because like nobody knows, like, hey, what happens if we release a feature mid-year that kind of just alters the meta? Like, what would that look like? And like, would people get re-engaged? Would they come back? Would they leave? And so we're gonna try this out and see kind of how the community responds. You know, Mutt's already doing this. The commentary team is already doing this, and you know, more and more gameplay is starting to kind of ramp up to do the same thing. And so, you know, next 2 to 3 years, I would imagine that every mode within Madden operates like a live service.
Interesting. So it could be an update to a mode or a brand new mode, I guess. Or
what?
Or you're up. Okay, I know I can't talk about it much, but I'm trying.
My point is that for a content update, it could be anything. It could be a fix. It could be new content. It could be new MUT solos. It could be a new most feared promotion. Like, all that stuff counts. And then the big one would be like, you know, what if there was a gameplay feature that kind of altered the meta mid-year? Like, what, you know, how would you react to that? And so, and then franchise also needs to figure out, like, you know, what would a daily content drop look like in franchise? Like, what is Madden's equivalent of a daily event in Destiny, and you know, all this stuff.
So are we getting would you say this meta-defining thing's kind of like Precision Passing 2.0 meta-defining, where it's kind of like cool to look at, or is it meta-defining like the hit stick in 05 was meta-defining?
It's not an on-the-field mechanic.
Okay, all right, gotcha. So I kind of want to keep talking about that, but I know we can't.
You won't have to wait long.
Okay. All right.
Well,
so hey, how far out in the future do you schedule your Madden improvements? And like, I know in our first podcast, I actually kind of want to hear you say it. What's your roadmap look like from here till whenever? Like, how far out?
Well, previously we only thought, you know, 2 to 3 years in advance, but since I'm in this new role and there's a relatively new executive who's just joined our team from another very prominent developer, and his mind works a lot like mine. We're kind of working backwards from where we want to be 5 years from now. And so we've kind of established a vision of like, hey, in 5 years, where do you think we'll be? We've kind of painted that picture, and we're sort of working our way back from that. And I think you're not going to see really the beginnings of that vision come probably until Madden 20.
Wow.
But yeah, it's kind of like every time a new executive comes in, there's a little bit of a shift in the creative. And now that also that I'm more of a franchise level creative director instead of just gameplay, it's allowing me to kind of really start to push the franchise in the direction I think it needs to go, whereas before I was primarily just focused on gameplay.
Wait, by franchise, do you mean franchises in the entire game of Madden, or franchises in CFM?
No, I mean the entire game.
Oh, wow. I can't believe I misunderstood you earlier. Sorry, when you said franchise earlier, I was thinking the franchise mode. I feel kind of weird. And Texas, any questions? Anything you want to talk about that with the 5-year plan?
No.
Okay. What do you got? What do you got for us next?
I mean, I'm out of questions, but I got more questions that people want to know. Pressing questions.
Is this gonna be a hard hitting question again?
No, another one. This one's tough. Like this one is kind of 50-50 for some people. Rex, is a lettuce wrap a sandwich?
No.
So what would you define as a sandwich?
A 16-inch Philly cheesesteak with onions, peppers, mushrooms, bacon, mayonnaise, ketchup, and only from Philadelphia.
Now that's a sandwich. Yeah.
Gotcha. So it's a cheeseburger sandwich then, since that has the meat and cheese and the other stuff.
I also, by the way, the other night I went to this restaurant and it had this badass French dip that was made with short ribs instead of.
Ooh.
Oh my god, I rocked that thing.
Is that the one that you posted on Twitter? Or is that
No, that was Short Ribs Benedict, a different restaurant.
Different short ribs. All right, I got one more question for you, and then we've held you long enough, and then I'm sorry for the length, but we're very curious. We basically dedicate our lives to this game, and we love it so much. My last question for you: how much? Kind of another serious one. How much does the NFL license limit Madden to what you can do? Like in the past, I know Madden's had to take things out of the game, like uniform customization, helmets flying off, ambulances on the field, concussions, dynamic attendance, hitting like bystanders or like cameramen on the sideline, that kind of stuff. So you guys have also had like big hits tuned down in the past. Does that would you say the NFL or your lawyers limit the franchise more?
I wouldn't put it on either of those things. I think it's more on the developers having a respect for the game and the shield.
Okay.
Like none of that stuff. Like Clint and I, we don't talk about like over the top stuff like that. Now, the stuff that you talked about, customization and all that other stuff. Obviously, there's limitations because you're talking about NFL franchise, NFL Shield franchise mode. It's all immersed in this very authentic vision, and you don't want to like make up stuff when you're building an authentic simulation mode. I do think MUT affords us some more freedom, and you start to see that with the alternate uniforms. And I think there's room potentially for even deeper customization in that mode or potentially somewhere else. It's definitely something we want to get to, and it's high on our list. But because there's no model for mapping that back into franchise mode, because you can't really take creative license with the NFL Shield or what the teams or their stadiums or anything like that. It's a little bit more tricky to figure out its path into Madden than it would be for another game.
I gotcha. I actually thought of two more quick questions, if that's okay. Will Madden come back to the PC anytime soon?
I can't answer that.
Okay. All right. Because I know FIFA has it and people like it there. And last Madden on PC was 09. So maybe we'll see.
We really want it. I won't, I'll tell you the dev team wants it. It's just every time something big like that comes up, it's like, okay, how are we staffing this? And where's it coming from? And then,
yeah,
it's tough because you want to serve your customers and, you want to have big years and build big stories and give them everything they want. But at the same time, these things come up and you have to make strategic concessions to decide when is the right time. But I would have to assume we're going to get to that eventually.
Okay. Awesome. And then are you satisfied with where target passing was this year? It doesn't seem
absolutely not. Are you kidding me? Let me tell you something. Target passing was the first legitimate feature miss we've had on gameplay since I got there, in my opinion. I mean, some people could argue that and will argue the aggressive catch or argue that ball hawk was bad or whatever. But there's no feature where it's just nobody's using it. And that sucks for me because I have limited resources. And so when I make an investment in something and people don't like it and don't play it, that's time that could have been spent on something meaningful. And that pisses me off. And when I go to my bosses and I take ownership for stuff like this and say, look, we went after this thing this year and you built a trailer about it and everybody doesn't like it. And that's on me. And, whatever you spent in terms of these dev resources working for this long, I basically pissed your money away. And that's called taking ownership over a botched delivery of a feature. And target passing was probably the one that I was like, this is on me. It's on us, the gameplay team. We miffed. Looking back, I distinctly remember where the decision point was that I should have said, let's just give up But I didn't. I kept fighting to try to make it work and kept convincing myself that there were competitive players out there who would be awesome with it. But it didn't work out.
Well, it only needs a buff, though, right? All you have to do is...
Yeah, it didn't work out.
No? Okay. All right. Well,
There's too much happening and too much with time in pocket and pass rush pressure and making reads and checkdowns. I don't see, now in hindsight, I don't see a way of really salvaging that feature and making it a primary way to play.
Well, all it really needs is a wide receiver catching bonus on like goal line fades or anything like that, or like guys not to break on it as hard in zones. It just needs a slight buff. Like, sure, it's unrealistic, but it's a video game.
It's got way bigger problems than that. I've watched it in playtesting. I've watched it with casual users. Like it's got much bigger problems than that.
Okay. Yeah, I think, in my opinion, and I know you've gotten way more opinions than that, and all that playtesting. In my opinion, it's close to being workable. It just needs a slight buff to some of the mechanics, like to tune down reactions and tune up maybe high point wide receiver catching. But Texas, any final thoughts or anything on target passing or anything else before we wrap it up?
Yeah, hopefully target passing, I guess we get again next year a little bit more. Because like the time of pocket this year is better than it has been in years past, but I don't find myself using it even if I have a lot of time in the pocket because I don't know. It just seems something that I just can't grasp. So if we get it again next year, maybe like it'd probably be better if it's a little bit more easy to use for everybody to pick up, and the elite quarterbacks that you use excel when target passing.
Yeah, there's no way to make it easier to use. It's so fast. Like things happen so fast, and receivers are moving so fast. Like I think the only way to make that damn thing work is to go into bullet time, and I'm not doing that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not doing that. I hated that feature in NCAA 14.
Yeah, that'd be tough to do online too. I got you. Well, thank you very much, Rex. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your time and sharing your knowledge. You're quite knowledgeable. We appreciate your expertise on the game and its future. I think it's in good hands. I think Texas Boy would agree with me. Everybody give Rex a follow on Twitter for sure. But thank you, Rex. And
thank you guys.
Yeah. I'll talk to you later. I'll see you around.
All right, guys. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.